I came in with all my stuff and he came into the marriage with all his stuff. And we just took our stuff and went back our merry ways. Hi, friend. Welcome back to the channel. So, I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of divorce today. And divorce is just something that, happens to plenty of us. And over 50% of marriages end in divorce. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to get a divorce. That's why I wanted to talk about like the pros and cons of it today, and how that process was for me, and how I'm feeling about it today. Hopefully by the end of this video you feel a little bit better when it comes to the thinking about divorce and why it's so hard for people to even talk about it, especially married people. Of course, as some of you guys know, I'm not going into the details of behind my divorce specifically, just because I want to protect my ex and things like that. And but I will be talking about the experience overall. But before I do anything like that, I do want to talk about today's sponsor, Aura. I'm a person that's been on the internet for a very long time, since I was 13 or 14, right? And a lot of my information is on the internet. I did a Google search recently of my entire name, my first and last name, and I did not like what I saw at all. Anything that could be used against you is all over the internet. And having this information out there is so uncomfortable to me. And that's why I really love today's sponsor, Aura. Whenever your information is out there like this, data brokers will actually use it to sell it to spammers and scammers, and those people will use it to target you. Anything that you have put on the internet is out there. Your full name, your email address, your address, Aura shows me which data brokers are using my information and automatically sends them a request to opt me out. Cleaning out my information not only helps reduce the spam I get, those spam emails that you get all the time. You've won $10 million. Click here to get it. Yeah, that kind of spam. It also protects me from hackers who could be selling my information to access my shopping accounts, my bank accounts, my social media, things like that. With Aura, you also get features like antivirus, VPN, password management, and parental control for people who have children. This is great because you don't have to download all these different apps to get those features. You get it all in one app with Aura. If you value your privacy and want to protect yourself from online scammers, please go to aura.com/akudo to get a 2-week trial on the app today. Thank you again for Aura for sponsoring this video, and let's get on with it. I've been officially divorced since 2022. I was married officially for 5 years. And when we finally decided to divorce, it was weird because we submitted the paperwork. So all you have to do is go online, submit the paperwork, send it into the state. And the thing about California is that they want you to kind of be legally separated for 6 months before you actually divorce, right? And it's just a law, and it's just something that happens. So just because you send in the paperwork doesn't mean that you're officially divorced or anything like that. So my ex and I submitted the paperwork. We sent it into the state, and 6 months later, we got the paperwork back. And 6 months later, we were officially divorced. The reason why it was really easy for us was because we didn't have any assets in our names. We didn't buy a car. We didn't buy a home. We didn't do anything like that. So it was really, really easy. The state made it easy for us. If we wanted to kind of take it a little further, we could have hired a lawyer. But my ex and I decided it wasn't necessary because we didn't have any really assets to divide or anything like that. I came in with all my stuff and he came into the marriage with all his stuff, and we just took our stuff and went back our merry ways, and it was really, really easy. And when we got the divorce papers back, it was really funny because it was exactly what we submitted to the state, but this time it was stamped. What we got back wasn't like a letter or anything. It wasn't like an introduction or anything. It was anything. It was literally a stamped version of the paperwork that we sent in. And it said, your marriage has ended as of this day and this month. And it was just the weirdest thing because we were married for 5 years. But that's the difference between like the legal process and your emotions, right? Because at the end of the day, your marriage in the legal world is just that. It's just legal, and it's just, it's just a thing. When I officially got that paperwork in, I felt so weird. I was like, that's literally the end of my marriage. This stamped paperwork means the end of my marriage. And it was just a really weird feeling. And it made me sad, but that's just how it is in the eyes of the government, right? Okay, so going backwards a little bit before my divorce, I do want to say this. People don't go into marriage thinking that they're going to get divorced. I certainly didn't. I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this man. I wanted everything with him, and that our life just didn't end up working out the way we wanted to, and that is perfectly okay. And one of the reasons why I feel like people don't talk about divorce, or people like are so like against it and are so like when it comes to it, or like or even afraid to talk about it, is unfortunately it's shame. Shame is why people don't want to talk about divorce, and it really sucks, because if you took away the shame, people, especially women, can leave their marriages much, much, much sooner. I knew my marriage was ending about 3 years into it, and I stayed the extra 2 years. And the reason why I stayed those extra 2 years is because of shame. It's shame of what will my parents think, because I am the only one in my family that's been divorced. Everybody else is still married. My parents have been married for a really long time. My sister's been married for a really long time. My other sister's been married for a very long time. And I'm the only one that got divorced. So the thought of having to tell my family I'm getting divorced frightened me. The thought of having to tell my friends that I'm getting divorced frightened me. And it shamed me. I felt like I was going to get like ridiculed and like get like just talked about, and that's why people don't talk about divorce or even want to even think about it, because there's so much shame and stigma. Another thing too is that I was raised Catholic, and the divorce in a Catholic world is not a thing. It's not even, you can't even think about it. You can't even say the D word. Okay. So that's one of the reasons why I felt like I stayed in my marriage a little longer than I should have. But I really wanted my marriage to work. So that's another reason why I stayed. But shame is just it's like a little thing, but it means so much in the world and how people operate in the world. And I really, really, really want to like discourage shame in general. And I want to discourage shame in divorce, because there's really no shame in it. For me, divorce was the last option, right? We tried different kinds of things to make it work, and it just didn't work. Divorce was the last option. We felt like we didn't have any other option but to divorce. Would I have preferred to stay in the marriage and have it work out? Yes. But staying in the marriage would have meant I would be unhappy. I would be not moving forward with my life. I would be stale. I would be still. And I would basically be just kind of frozen in time and not being able to do anything if I were to just stay in the marriage for the sake of not divorcing. Even in that moment when I was thinking about divorce in the future, I was thinking about, what are men gonna think? Are men gonna even want to be with me? Am I gonna be like used up? Am I used up now because I've been divorced? But then you think about it, you're like, wait a minute, 50% of marriages end in divorce. I didn't want to be a part of that 50%, but here I am, and plenty of my friends have been divorced. And it doesn't feel as bad. I'm not sitting here trying to encourage divorce. I'm not. I'm really not. If you don't need to divorce, don't. But if you feel like you're staying in a marriage because you don't want the shame of divorce, freaking get a divorce, okay? Because that shame is a good reason to stay, but it's not good in the long term, right? Know that like divorce is okay. It's not that bad. We as women now have more rights than ever to leave a marriage that does not make us happy. We have a lot of opportunities to walk away. And I know that some people are not set up for that. And I get it. And that's a reason you want to stay in your marriage because of your children. You want to stay in your marriage because you're broke and you can't leave the marriage. You want to like stay because you really, really are in love with your husband or wife, but they're not in love with you, At the end of the day, it's not worth to stay in a relationship or a marriage that does not make you happy. And I know it's like, oh, well, you're selfish. Why would you? That's a very selfish thinking, but it's the truth. I wouldn't be, honestly, I don't think I would have my YouTube channel, my YouTube career right now if I was still in my marriage. because I felt like my marriage literally held me back in a lot of things. So now we're going to talk about like after divorce and some of the pros and cons of being divorced. I want to start with cons first and then kind of end on a happy note with the pros. So of course I talk about the shame of it all. That's a con right there. And then another thing that is kind of was not good was the living back alone again. That was a very con moment where I had to kind of get used to being alone again, because I lived alone for a really long time. My ex and I moved in together, and then I had to go back to living alone. Speaking of living alone, I had to pay my own bills again. Before, my ex and I would divide all of our bills, and it was pretty nice. I had to work for myself again. I have to pay my own bills again. I had to start living sort of like paycheck to paycheck again. So that was a huge con of mine. Another con, of course, is just missing and mourning your ex. I had to do that. I feel like even if you had the worst divorce in your life, right? And you had the worst thing that could ever happen to you, you still are going to mourn your marriage. And I had to do that. So that was a con. There were days where I missed my ex so much. I wanted to get on the phone and call him, and I wanted to just be like, let's skip this whole divorce thing and get back together and do it again. It's fine. But then I knew at the long term of it all is that I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Another con would be like actually having to start over. Like basically you have to restart your life. You have to like adjust your life again, because you made this decision with this person and you think you were going to be together forever, and now you have to rethink your life, and that's really hard. Starting over is freaking difficult, and that was definitely a con that I had to deal with. And now let's go to the pros. I think this is a more happier version of me. Pros of being divorced: your freedom. that's the big one. Your freedom. The freedom of having to do whatever you want on your own time. When my ex and I ended the marriage, I was able to get a cat. I couldn't get a cat with my ex before. We were waiting to get our like financial stuff together before we made a commitment together to get a cat. I got my own cat. That's it. Period. So I mentioned it earlier, is just starting your life over again. Getting an opportunity to restart your life is such a good thing, and it feels really scary at first, but it's such a good thing. And I can't even imagine like not being able to start your life over. Even if you have to start your life over at 43, it's amazing because you get to like set your own rules. You know what I mean? You get to like do what you want to do. You get to see what works for you that wasn't working before in your marriage. Another pro: dating. Dating is a huge pro. You get to see what kind of man you want. You get to see what really works for you in a man, what you really want in a man. Like I always say, this is going to sound like a really weird thing to say, but I always say that your first marriage should be a starter marriage. Like a free trial, like I just talked about in my sponsorship. It should definitely be like a free trial, because you don't know what you want. You don't know what it's like to be married until you're married. That's the thing about it. So that's another pro. Yeah, those are some pros and cons of divorce. Those are some things I took away in being divorced. I am like at a really being divorced, after you go through all the process, the hardship, the memories, the future that you never had, the children you'll never have, the home that you'll never build. After you go through that process of just feeling it, when you come out the other end, it's freedom, baby. It's freedom. It's freedom. It's freedom. And that's what I want for anybody that's even thinking about divorce. Just think about your freedom. Again, I'm not here promoting divorce. I'm not saying like, you better go to that courthouse and submit those papers. Don't do that. Really think and know that divorce is not so bad. It's not so bad. It's not this thing that will ruin your life forever. Because back to the dating thing, every guy that I tell that I'm divorced to, they could care less. I tell them, oh, I've been married. I either get, well, I too have been married, or I don't care. So if you think that's going to matter, it doesn't matter. So don't be ashamed if you're thinking about divorce, if you've been divorced, if you don't want to get married before because you don't want to get divorced. It's okay, and you can do it. There's going to be so much light and so much freedom at the end of the tunnel once you're done with it. Don't forget to use my code Akudo at aura.com/Akudo to get the first 2 weeks free on the app. And YouTube should be recommending you some videos right now. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you back here next week.